Good evening, folks, and welcome to a special edition of Beer Rating with Sean Connors. For those of you following on Facebook, you noticed here yesterday that I picked up some beer for upcoming shows. I actually meant to pick up, 2 or 3 type thing, and end up with 8 or 9, a lot more than I expected. And I don't want the beer to sit in the fridge for any longer than it has to, so I decided I'm going to do a couple of extra episodes, maybe 2 a week for the next little while, just to get rid of the beer so it's not sitting. So that's a problem that I had, and it's not a bad solution. Drink more beer. I like to think of that as a retirement problem. Alright, anyway, for this episode we're going to look at a Belgian beer. It's a Petrus or Petrus Traditional Tripel Ale, or a triple ale also called. And you might notice I'm using a more or less a cognac glass. It's a snifter glass. And the reason for that, they're actually quite common nowadays for stronger ales to use this type of glass. But they say, it's a big bowl. It gives you a chance to kind of swirl it to get the more aroma. And it's known, they say it actually it actually suppresses the aroma. It keeps it in the glass where it's kind of bulgy and kind of tapers off. So we'll give it a go and see how it works. Alright, so we'll pour it up first. And we'll talk a little bit about it. It's a smaller glass than a regular beer. I think this one is 330 mils. So I really don't need a big beer mug or anything else for it. You can see the color there. It's kind of like golden. Alright. Not bad. That's not too bad. I'm not quite sure what the rating would be, but we'll talk a little bit about it for a second. As I said, it's a Belgian ale. It's a triple or a triple, and the triple actually they use 3 times the amount of hops that you would normally use for a typical what they call a Trappist brew. And for the triple, it's 3 times the amount of hops. And this one I actually use 3 different types of hops. The alcohol contents, it's 8%, so it's actually considered a strong ale. And normally these types of glasses as well, they're quite common for stronger ales. And normally with stronger ales, you're not drinking as much as you would be a lighter ale, obviously. And this one, they say it's re-fermented in the bottle. So they do the basic normal fermentation, and then they do a second fermentation in the bottle. And I'm actually surprised, because normally with a re-fermentation, I actually expected to see a little bit of a cloudiness, but there's none, as you can see from this, at all. And this is a family brewery out of Belgium. The family name is, I'm going to bastardize the name, it's a De Braberandere family brewery. Debrabandere. And it's a family brewery, and they've been on the go since the end of the 19th century, so they've been around for a while. Triples or triples are normally fairly carbonated. You can see this got a little bit of fizz to it. It's still bubbling, not a big head. They normally got, like they say, a dense, almost like a mousse-like head to it, or foam, and I'm not really seeing this. Not a bad beer at all, but it's not, well, from my research with this type of brewery, I actually expected a little bit more of a head. It's definitely got a fruity taste to it, and that's actually quite common with this type of beer as well, the triples. It's not a overly heavy fruity taste, but it is a bit of a fruit taste to it. It's not bad. Not quite decided what I'm going to give it a rating, but it's not a bad beer. Alright, a couple weeks ago we talked about the 4 main types of items in a beer. We talked about hops. Well, actually I just introduced them. We talked about the malt or the grain, and then we looked at the water, the hops, and the yeast. And then I said over the next couple of weeks we're going to talk a little bit more about each one. So last week we talked about the malt or the grain. We talked about how it's barley. Basically, it's wetted until it begins to sprout, and then it's dried really quickly. then it's milled up, and then it's boiled to give you basically what they call a wort. So this week I'm going to talk about the second ingredient, which is pretty basic. You're basically water, H2O. Beer is basically anywhere from 90 to 95% water, so it's actually a pretty important component. And basically, the water is, if you go back to high school chemistry, a solution, you got your solvent and your solubles or solutes. Well, your water is your solvent. Your water is basically the carrier of everything else. Excuse me while I have another drink. So, it's actually important that you have good water. And as you said, the grains are actually soaked in water, and then they're boiled in water. And as we go through the process, water is constantly used. So it's really important that you have good water. Do you have hard water? Do you have soft water? What's the case? Whatever the case might be. Actually, throughout the world, a lot of times, regions, the type of beer they brewed was actually dependent on what type of water they had. In the Czech Republic, it was around the area that Pilsner was born. It was soft water, which was actually good for Pilsner, and that's what they used. If you go to Dublin, Ireland, they actually have hard water. And as such, hard water was found that was good for stouts. And obviously, you know, you think of Ireland, you think of Guinness. And that's one of the reasons why Guinness was brewed as stouts were brewed there as opposed to other types of water. Another area in England, it's Burton-upon-Trent. I think it's in northern England. I could be off there a little ways, but it's definitely in England. I'm pretty sure it's up north. At one time, they had over 200 breweries in that area, and the reason for it is that the water there was high in gypsum, and that's known to help with English ales to give them a robust flavor. So there you go. Water, it's pretty important for your beer. It's actually the carrier of everything else, and the quality of water depends on what type of beer. As I said, you know, different areas brew different beers depending on their water quality. Nowadays, it's not quite the factor it was, say, 100 years ago or 200 years ago or even a century ago, basically. Nowadays, with the science that we have, no matter what type of water you have, you can manipulate it, whether adding trace minerals or taking away trace minerals or whatever the case might be, to give you the water that you need for a specific type of beer. So if you decide you're going to brew if you're going to brew a stout and you need hard water, or if you're going to brew a lager and you need soft water, you can actually manipulate the water. But years ago, that wasn't the case. So your water and your location depend on what type of beer you're going to make. All right, back to this one, our Petrus Traditional Tripel Ale or Triple Ale. What am I going to give for a rating this week? It's definitely flavorful. I find since I've started all this, I used to be more of a lager guy, a Pilsner guy. However, I'm getting more into this. I'm wanting more flavor from my beer, and this definitely has it. It's not overwhelming, but it's got a nice little flavor to it. All right. So we said before, a 3 was a good beer, a 4 was a very good beer, and this is somewhere in between. So I think for this week, I'm going to give this one a 3.5. It's not a beer that I say, oh my God, I can't wait to have another one, but it's not a beer that I'm going to say, oh my God, I don't want another one. So I'm enjoying the beer. I wish the bottle was a little bit bigger. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, and for this week, I'm going to give it a 3.5. If anybody's wondering about my shirt, for local people, they're saying, oh geez, why is he wearing that? That team's long gone. Vintage, people, vintage. All right, thanks for joining on this special edition, and hopefully I'll see you again later on this week. And until next beer, remember, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.